What's up everyone, I'm Arcadenaut here, and today's video will be all about the Final Fantasy XVI demo that is recently launched if you have missed it. I won't be talking about my thoughts and feelings about the demo, but I will mostly focus on the elements and the concepts that we have seen in the demo. I won't be talking about any character or any event that's not in the demo, and it doesn't matter if you're a newcomer to Final Fantasy series or a long fan. You might learn something about the origins of the Eikons, which are one of the main concepts of the Final Fantasy universe, or just have a better insight about the elements or how the world setting is created. Starting from the Eikons, I will talk about the Cidolfus, who is appearing by the Eikonic challenge of the demo, the medieval concept, the creator team behind the Final Fantasy, and how their previous work Final Fantasy XIV can be felt through the demo. If you're ready, and I don't think anyone was ready for what we have seen by the demo, but let's get started. Let's start with Eikons and how they shaped the Final Fantasy series throughout more than 30 years. As we see by the opening scene of the demo, two great entities covered in fire, namely Phoenix and Ifrit, clash to death. And later on in the events, we also see two different armies battle each other, while two different Eikons this time appearing in the battlefield and fight to death. Shiva, the Lady of Ice, and Titan, the Heart of the Earth. Besides Phoenix, these Eikons, which are also called summons in the Japanese version of Final Fantasy XVI, are mostly known as, again, summons in the Final Fantasy universe, and these majestic, sometimes fearsome entities wield formidable elemental powers. However, they are mostly in aid of our heroes across different Final Fantasy titles. Ifrit, Shiva and Titan, along with Thunder God Ramuh, all appear first in Final Fantasy III, and they come to our aid, dealing enormous damage to our enemies throughout summons or incantations, so to say. As another example, these entities are also called the Guardian Force in Final Fantasy VIII, appointed to any character within our party to grant them additional attribute points. And as in Final Fantasy X, there are blessings, they are guardian entities called Aeons that would help Yuna to complete her journey of pilgrimage. And between these summons, the King of Dragons, Bahamut, is the oldest one. He is the entity that grants our main party a class upgrade, turning our warrior into knight, rogue into ninja, and mages into wizards. And Garuda of Final Fantasy XVI seems like an alternate version of her Final Fantasy XIV design. As in fact, this is the first time in the Final Fantasy series that these summons, Eikons, are turned into weapons for kingdoms or armies with Final Fantasy XVI, and this time, chosen warriors or people like Joshua Rosfield, Cidolfus or Benedicta can turn into these beings. And these people are called Dominant, having the full blessing of that Eikon within them. Unfortunately, our main character and brother to Joshua, Clive Rosfield, does not have the power of Phoenix within, but only a mere blessing of it, granting him to use a small portion of this mighty, life-giving mythical creature. To be honest, I am also thinking about making a fully detailed video about the summons of Final Fantasy universe in the future, probably after I finish my Final Fantasy XVI journey, but if you're also feeling interested, be sure to tell me by the comments below. Right after the basic information about the summons or the Eikons in the Final Fantasy XVI's case, I would also like to talk about a lovely homage and interesting inspiration from Final Fantasy Tactics. You might already know, I've said it more than a couple of times already, Final Fantasy Tactics is my favorite Final Fantasy title, and believe me, Final Fantasy XVI has lots of influences, and one is the Thunder God Cidolfus. You see, during our journey in Final Fantasy Tactics, we meet with Cidolfus Orlando, a general in the Order of the Southern Sky known by the title Thunder God Cid. due to his victories and fearsome sword saint techniques. He joins the main character Ramza Beolv on his quest and branded as a traitor by the many. And here, as we play the Eikonic challenge of the Final Fantasy XVI demo, we see Clive infiltrating a castle with a mysterious man named Cid, who is the dominant of Ramuh, the Thunder God. Cid of Final Fantasy XVI may not be as strong as Final Fantasy Tactics Cidolfus, but he is being called as traitor to other dominants by Benedicta a couple of times, and it seems like he is really trying to help Clive on his quest, just like Cidolfus of Final Fantasy Tactics helped Ramza Beolv. Such a pleasant homage in my opinion, since the art director of Final Fantasy Tactics, Vagrant Story and Final Fantasy XII, Hiroshi Minagawa-san, also worked on Final Fantasy XVI to improve the ambience and the overall lighting and environment of the project, and with that, leading us to medieval concept. If you're a newcomer to Final Fantasy universe, it might sound a bit strange, but this kind of a dark medieval concept is quite rare in Final Fantasy universe. Although Final Fantasy has its castles, warriors of light blessed by Mother Crystal fighting against the evil kinda concept, the medieval concept with kingdoms fighting against each other, plotting treachery for their own gain, kind of an approach is actually quite rare. And I would recommend you to give a look at Final Fantasy Tactics, maybe Vagrant Story, Tactics Ogre, and maybe Final Fantasy XII if you are interested in Final Fantasy XVI setup. Although there is a lot of bloodshed in these titles, possibly none of them had the impact of Final Fantasy XVI. And I believe that's due to the storytelling style of Naoki Yoshida-san, the producer of Final Fantasy XVI. Also known as Yoshi P, is known for how he saved Final Fantasy XIV, the massive multiplayer online title of Final Fantasy series, from being a failure, as he redeemed that title with each expansion he launched with his team. And we can feel the influence, the elements of Final Fantasy XIV all around in Final Fantasy XVI, mostly with Masayoshi Soken-san's music. I felt the vibes of the first Final Fantasy XIV expansion pack, Heavensward, while playing as Clive and fighting against bosses during the demo. And I can't wait to fully experience the story that they have prepared for us. The vibes of Heavensward can be felt throughout the demo, especially when we fought against the Imperial Dragoon, voiced by Robert Vernon, who is also the voice of another Dragoon of Final Fantasy XIV, Estinian, and just like Thunder God Cidolfus, I believe this was another homage to their previous titles. And if I were to go back to Final Fantasy XVI's world setting, as I mentioned before, a world full of political strifes and betrayal is waiting for us. As the world of Final Fantasy XVI is, as we've seen by now, is quite merciless, shaped around yet another fundamental of the Final Fantasy series, the crystals. The world of Final Fantasy XVI has the Mother Crystals, granting the ability to cast magic for the people. These crystals can help you to cure people, cast magic to fill your glass, light a fire to cook, or even, as we see in the demo, help you to trim your grass. Mother Crystals can also be defined maybe as like an oil or like an energy resource for Final Fantasy XVI's world as well. However, we also have these branded people who can cast magic without using these crystals. You might think like, oh, these people are sure lucky, they can cast fire, defeat the monsters quickly, maybe turn into super soldiers just like Sephiroth, right? Well, as in fact they are not. Although this ability might seem like a blessing, it's quite the opposite. The branded people are slaves and seen as the cheap labor for kingdoms, since they can cast magic without the need for a crystal, and these crystals have been one of the most important story aspects of Final Fantasy titles since the beginning. Since the first Final Fantasy, we had the elemental crystals keeping the harmony of the world, and then this concept turned into character customizing elements like materia for Final Fantasy VII and so on. On the other side, we have bloodline dominance and right to rule that comes with that, as we can see this with Joshua and Clive. Clive is rejected by the Phoenix itself on birth, leading him to be an ordinary soldier, the first shield that would protect Joshua from any harm, although he is the firstborn son. And last but not least, we see Imperials backstabbing the Rosfields, leading to the appearance of a second Eikon of Fire, Ifrit, clashing with the Phoenix above a castle full of dead Rosefield soldiers. And this was just a demo, folks. Final Fantasy XVI had lots of bittersweet stories, and trust me, the full version will be even darker and more ruthless. And with that, I would like to go back to the first topic of this video, the Eikons, and talk about the fight between the Phoenix and Ifrit. Phoenix is not a commonly used summon in Final Fantasy universe, but as we know from the popular culture and other resources, it is also one of the rarest creatures that can revive from its own ashes. I believe here, having two fire Eikons at the same time symbolizes the life and death. There will be no life without fire, but no one can deny the destructive power of fire as well. Without giving any spoilers to anyone who hasn't played Final Fantasy XVI demo yet, this moment had a great impact on everyone, as Phoenix rises from a bloody battlefield, possibly as an anomaly. Another fire Eikon, Ifrit, also appears and challenges Phoenix. And as a side note, from its first appearance to Final Fantasy XVI, Ifrit with its ultimate move Hellfire always symbolized the fires of hell, the destruction itself. And we can see a glimpse of this Hellfire move during their battle as well, and we still yet to challenge Titan, Garuda, Bahamut and Odin as well in our Final Fantasy XVI journey around 1 week time. I can't imagine what Naoki Yoshida and his team prepared for us. May they have mercy on our souls. And if you're a newcomer to Final Fantasy series, if you have never played a single Final Fantasy title before, yes, you can enjoy Final Fantasy XVI without playing the previous titles, as each and every Final Fantasy title are separate from each other. They even made Yoshi P to state the same. Of course, there will be Final Fantasy creatures like Morbol or Gigas that we have battled during the demo, or the Chocobos that are basically the horses of Final Fantasy universe, but there is nothing that would prevent you from enjoying it. I believe these are the background stuff that you need to know right after playing the demo, and I believe I need to make a more in-depth analysis or Final Fantasy related content in the future as well. If you are interested in any of these, be sure to share your thoughts by the comments below or follow me on Twitter. As always, thank you for watching today's video. More Final Fantasy related contents are on their way. Stay tuned and enjoy the Final Fantasy XVI demo.